in my mind, I like pair innovation with technology already, and you are like, hey, these are separate things.
I guess the key question here is the innovation influencing the technology that the organization needs, or is technology influencing the innovation? If I put in this technology, innovation is going to happen, or if I put in this technology, we're going to, accelerate the innovation. What we need to look at here is how does one support the other? They're not naturally living together. When we bring it back into that plan and bring it back into the reason of the transformation and bring it back into where the organization is going, are we happy with that, or do we need to change something there?
G'day everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Lean Solutions podcast. I'm joined today by my fantastic co-host, Shayne Daughenbaugh. Shayne, how are you, mate?
I am well, thank you, sir. How about you doing?
I'm going well. So for those of you who haven't tuned in before, my name's Andy Olrich, and I'm coming to you live from Australia, which is really cool because, Shayne, checking out your shirt, there's an Aussie hat there, mate.
Right?
What's going on?
I'm trying to represent, because I hear that our guest also is in Australia. So I'm trying to represent. I got my Bluey shirt on, because I had to have something to connect with the two that are down under. And as I was putting this on, and I started thinking about something profound that this little blue healer from Australia teaches us. And stick with me here, but in every episode, what I have found, I don't watch a lot of them, but in every episode that I have watched, I found that Bluey turns, ordinary situations into some kind of crazy adventure. Whether whatever it happens to be, using power of imagination and play. And here's the really brilliant part. She doesn't just dream up these games randomly. She seems to observe what's going on around her, understands what everyone needs, and then creates experiences that bring the whole family or all her friends together toward this common goal. Now, I know that there's what's the bridge here, Shayne, between this Australian cartoon and this child's cartoon character and business innovation? Well, in the corporate world, I think that we often face similar, or leaders often face similar challenges that Bluey seems to be able to navigate effortlessly. That's the word I was looking for. There's this massive gap between technological capabilities and then the business outcomes that leaders truly, really want to achieve. Everywhere it seems, the more leaders I talk to, the more I'm hearing about how they're struggling with how to turn promising technology, into something that's scalable, aligned, innovative, whatever words you want to use, to get the results that truly serves their customers. And I'm excited to hear about the guest today because, as I understand it, we're going to be looking into and exploring a 7-part framework that helps leaders bridge this gap. In thinking through everything from change management to process design, strategy, all the way to the customer experience. And so I'm very excited about this. Andy, can you introduce our guest for us today?
I would love to, Shayne. It's my absolute pleasure to introduce everybody to Claire Quigley. I've known Claire for a little while, and I'm super excited to have her on the podcast finally. So who is Claire? Claire is the director of Tech Team Whisperer, and she's a powerhouse of change, guiding teams in innovation and leaders into innovation to shed outdated paradigms and transform organizations through technology and innovation. She's also the deputy chair of the Hunter Innovation Forum, which is a fantastic network that I'm connected with as well. She's a key player in driving regional transformation by creating meaningful connections and fostering dynamic collaboration in the Hunter region. Now, Claire, while she lives in Australia now, she was originally from Kilkenny in Ireland, and she brings over 25 years of experience in technology, strategy, and innovation to the table. And her journey began in the fast-paced world of high-tech startups, where she honed her skills before taking on a pivotal role as research commercialization specialist at the Walton Institute, formerly TSSG. Claire has this unique ability to bridge the gap between technical breakthroughs and real-world applications, and that's made her a catalyst for innovation from the start. Now, Claire's impact doesn't stop there. I've seen this firsthand. Right? During her time with Waterford Chamber, Claire was instrumental in supporting local businesses through a period of economic turbulence following the closure of Waterford Crystal, and that was an economic pillar of the region at the time. Her leadership as 2IC was a beacon of guidance for businesses, helping them seize new opportunities in the face of uncertainty. Now, she's even made a detour to corporate land, holding strategic roles in corporate giants like Canon Australia, and again, driving innovation agendas, leading groundbreaking projects and launches. Now, there's a lot we could go on with Claire. I think you've got an idea of what we have here today. And look, she's really strong at putting people at the heart of her work. She wholeheartedly believes in the power of DEI as a cornerstone of her success in imagination, collaboration, and innovation. And she's also a proud judge for the annual Tech Diversity Awards. So Claire is just an amazing person. It's a privilege to know her, and it's a privilege to introduce her to you all today. And when she's not doing that, she's living up in the Upper Hunter of New South Wales, and she's surrounded by her vibrant family of humans, horses, and dogs. Claire,
Are there any healers? I just need to know.
I was just
Two
gonna
Jack Russells.
Bluey is brokenhearted.
Claire, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you, guys. Thank you for that introduction. Thank you for having me. I'm good. I'm good. It's a nice early morning here in New South Wales, Australia.
Yeah,
for sure.
I've got that excuse when I trip over my words and things like that. Hey, it's 5 a.m.
That's right.
Break. And you get that same license today, Claire, so we're glad to have you.
Oh, yes. I'm on my first coffee. We're good.
We'll get there.
So that was quite the bio. I mean, a very rich experience and list of all the things that you've done that you're involved with. Even going into the judging. What was the contest? The innovation contest or
Tech Diversity Awards?
Yes, the Tech Diversity Award.
Yeah.
Talk to me real quick. Give me 30 seconds about what that even is.
It's fantastic. So Tech Diversity Awards is essentially an awards which has been created by in order to recognize diversity in technology projects and where people are looking to utilize technology to create better diversity and inclusion in organizations, but also having greater representation, diverse representation of within technology teams as well, and how that plays out for the better for people. You know, we see great results in terms of applications that have been developed, for example, for people who have difficulty reading, or there's these fabulous, corporates, of course, have totally different level of what they produce. Right. I get to judge the Tech for Good category every year. We also have government, education, corporate programs as well, but we are very much about not just having different voices at the table, it's about giving those voice power at the table, so you actually have influence in the decisions, which is what I love about these awards, is how that plays out. So yes, that was a short version, but if you go on, just a quick plug, Tech Diversity Awards, because there's actually a whole program that they've now created for organizations to get involved in diversity in their technology teams and the work they do in technology. So yes, jump online, anybody who's interested.
I love that.
It's fabulous. It's great. And it's huge. It's getting so big, which is great, particularly now.
Good on you, Claire. You're a great human, and how powerful diversity is, linking to our topic today with aligning technology with innovation. How do we connect the dots? So we're going to dive into that today. Now, Claire, when we've caught up, you often talk about the gap between technology and the business outcomes leaders want. Can you share what this gap typically looks like when you walk into an organization and knowing what you know and have experienced? What are you seeing, and what do you think are some of the causes of that?
Yes. So I guess the first thing when I was kind of thinking about this morning, and jumping online with you guys, what's really interesting, I guess, in the last number of years is we haven't necessarily, it's not that we're failing more. So, there's lots of stats, depending on any reason, you can go 85% of projects fail, in inverted commas, up to 90%, 70%, depending on which report you're reading at any given time. But actually, what's really interesting that the research is showing us, guys, is that we're not necessarily failing more, we're just not succeeding more. We're delivering more mediocre results.
Really?
So that's the gap I see. Yeah, so we're actually gone. So in the last 10 years, you'd think we'd be getting, better wins on the board here, right?
Right.
But and Harvard has, produced some really good research around this, whereby we're looking at an average of, 12% absolute success in projects. We went from, I think it was 28% maybe failure to down to 13%. So you're like, oh, cool, we're reducing our failure rate. But actually what's happening is we're just fattening up in the middle of that pipeline where we're looking at an increase in mediocre results. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when I talk to execs, mediocre is not really where they want to be landing when they're launching these projects, right? Yes. So what's really interesting about that is the gap isn't like, oh, you can walk in and go, right, there's absolutely a really clear gap there. What happens is you get a sense, people are just you go in and you go, okay, we're pumping a lot of money into this, but things are not moving. There's a lot of bottlenecks showing up. Friction between teams is often a big one now, and it's interesting because it's never, overt friction. It's more people are working together, but they're not getting results, clarity in roles and responsibilities. The accountability elements are not very clear. So that's quite a thing I see. So there tends to be a lot of quiet resistance within teams is probably one of the big gaps I see. The other thing is depending on the leadership, how hands-on they are or not, the expectations and the clarity of those expectations plays out differently across the technology teams and other teams within the business, and what success looks like. So I guess that will be a big indicator to me of that gap is when I talk to people about, okay, well, how does this strategy play out in your role and in your function? I start to see a lot of there's disparate versions of what that looks like, which of course plays back into the strategy. And if you don't have very clear how you're going to do this, it very quickly becomes obvious in the results, which comes back to mediocre. So people are kind of, because they're smart people, they're driven people, but they're not necessarily aligned on what that success looks like and how to deliver it.
So my question then from this, when I think of mediocre, it's sometimes it's hard to see mediocre, especially you said it's
Yes.
like it's fattening. You know when there's great success and when there's an absolute failure, but mediocre in the middle is like, man, I don't know. What are some flags that leaders may that you can point out, one or two flags that you may have been able to see and say, because they go, hey, what's wrong with what we're doing here? We how can you help leaders identify that mediocre middle part to say, hey,
Yeah.
I mean, because some things they're going to point to the things that where the pain is. But if I'm just ambling along, I don't have any pain. I may not even see the opportunity for this innovation. That's hopefully what technology is supposed to help us do.
Yes, and no, great question. So I guess couple of things come up. One of those would be misaligned metrics. So the measurements that leaders are using versus what is being used in the teams are not aligned, or they're very heavily technology orientated. So people think, okay, I'm ticking the box. We've got our tech roadmap. We're delivering on this. So you're looking at the roadmap going, it's green, but yet you're walking into the organization and listening to the teams, and the results are not reflective of that dashboard. That's a big one. So I often see misaligned metrics. And when I talk about that, it's about the meaningful metrics. So what I see a lot of in organizations is we have maturity maps, we have, all these things telling us, looking at particular systems, how we're performing against the benchmarks in industry, for example. But does that really tell us how we're performing internally versus where we want to be? No, in most cases. We're looking externally for validation instead of going, hang on, where are we going? And what's the meaningful metric that's going to give us that guidance? And we don't necessarily pause and think about that in terms of how we execute the strategy that they're trying to play out. So that's a big one. The other one, Shayne, is I don't know. I think we've spoken about this before, Andy. Actually, is that cargo cult mentality. So this is kind of and I just love it. And somebody shared it with me, and I like in a different context. And I was like, oh my god, this is what we're doing in here in a particular organization I was in. So essentially, it's cargo cult is based on. So I think it was after World War II in the Pacific Islands. There was incidents where um, essentially the US Army were delivering cargo planes, obviously to provide supplies, etc. During the war, so these magnificent cargo planes would land, and the natives on these islands were looking at these beautiful big birds coming, landing, giving them food, giving them healthcare, giving clothing, etc. When the war ended, of course, these cargo planes no longer actually were delivering all these things. But a number of years later, some visitors to the island arrived and they started to observe what was in front of them. And they noticed that the natives used to go out at a certain time every evening and light some sticks. And just like, the guys on the runway would be going, hey, land here, cargo plane. And they'd made replica towers. They'd made replica goggles that they saw yeah. There's actually, if you go online, you can find out about this. But I guess how this actually works in my brain is like what was happening is they kept doing the things expecting a different outcome. So they were going out every evening nonstop. It's going, hey, we're going someday this cargo plane's going to land, and at no point did somebody ask, why are we doing this? Why, if this is not happening, okay, what do we need to change? And this is what I often see a lot in that pace is we actually we when we dive into it, people sometimes because of fear, they just continue doing what they've been doing until somebody absolutely tells them otherwise. And sometimes it's not knowing. So again, they'll kind of stay in that. And you'll see that, I'm sure, a lot in Lean, where we see people still hang on to the manual elements and the Excel spreadsheets of the work they're doing without questioning the effort they're putting in versus the output, right? The cargo plane isn't landing, guys. We got to change tack here. And if we don't, we're wasting a lot of, we're literally, hoping for the rain gods at some point. So, so I call it cargo cult mentality, what I see in the organization.
Yeah, I'm a war history buff, and Claire, you schooled me on that, and it is a thing, right? And it's amazing. So, how good's this, listeners? We've got Bluey, we've got cargo cult, right? Transcending
Yes,
messages, right? There's this thing around and diversity, right? But there's this whole thing about how we align that, and yeah, have that curiosity and that critical thinking skill. But you've got to make it happen too. Otherwise, the leaders will just go, "We can't be the prettiest or the most exciting factory that went broke." Okay, so how we do it now, Claire? As we said, you've got all these diverse industries that you work with, people included in that. Now, what your bread and butter now is you've developed this amazing 7-part framework, okay? And we touched on that earlier, but yeah, how can you start talking us through that? You can walk into any organization. What's this framework? How does it sort of keep us in that pathway to delivering what we're talking about?
sure. So I guess just to take a step back, the reason I developed this framework
Yep.
is because I've seen, multiple times, I guess when I looked at where leaders were coming from, is that there's often a gap in terms of the readiness. So leaders go, wow, here's our plan, this is our strategy, this is what we're going to do. Everybody gets really excited, awesome. And then in some cases they get into the execution and the pain starts to surface. People, they're getting that pushback and so on. So what I realized was leaders, managers, and so on, we're not actually stepping back and preparing effectively. So we're going from plan to execute. We're not preparing in between. And what does that look like? If we're going, what's it actually going to take to deliver this transformation? What's it actually going to be needed to be on this journey? Because it's great at the start, but how, when you're in the messy middle, what's going to keep you going, right? And this is why you need to prepare effectively. So that's really why I developed this framework. And this is as well, it just enables leaders to pause and ensure they're putting their effort and resource and energy in the right things as well. And yeah, so that's I guess where that came from, is helping leaders go, what's it going to take? What do I currently have? What's my gap? And then how do I prepare effectively? So that's what this framework's about. The other aspect of this framework, super quick, is that as we go through it, hopefully this morning quickly, what you'll notice is it takes you from that perspective of change, lean, all those wonderful methodologies and approaches and mindsets. We also weave in human centered thinking, the design thinking element. So we what this framework is designed to do is help you span across all the aspects that you need to consider rather than being heavily weighted in one particular area, because we always have a favorite comfort zone that we lean in and we know we're good at,
Right.
but
Yep.
we actually need to make sure we're stretching into the other areas in order to really increase the chance of success over mediocre.
Now, as you explain this, Claire, one of the things that I can do, you sent us this. I can put this up on the screen. You would still want
Oh,
to
yeah,
like talk through it for those that are just
sure.
listening. But if it's helpful, I can put this up on the screen and you can at least see it for just a little bit, and then I'll just come back to us
Yep.
if that's helpful.
Okay. Of course. Yeah, no, that would be helpful. I'm a
Okay.
visual person, Shayne, so that would be great. Thank you. Great. Well, when you're bringing that up, what you'll notice is, the starting point for this framework or this readiness framework is really stepping back and going, why are we doing this? What is the purpose of it? And which it sounds very simple in theory, but when you actually sit down again, whether it's within the leadership team or within teams within the organization, like why are we actually doing this? Why are we investing in this? And extending those questions into the time frame. So what are we actually hoping for here? Because sometimes, again, we could tend to just go, right, let's take the first step with not having a kind of a bit of a map put forward in terms of our time. And when I say time frame, it's not a project time frame, if that makes sense. It's just, hey, where would we love to be in 18 months' time? And connecting with the hearts and minds of the people in the room, because that's what's going to motivate you when things are tough, right? And also, another thing here that I've looked at, or I help people look at, is the support from the board and the support at the exec level. If you don't have support for transformation or the project in question, hold five, get that support, because you're going to be, it's going to be so hard to achieve what you're trying to achieve without that support. So it helps you just go, hang on, if I got this, this is fundamentally important. If I don't, I need to go and get it. Um, because yeah, you're just setting yourself up for a lot of struggle and frustration. That's, it's going to make it harder. So that's, I guess, where I start, really honing in on what is the absolute purpose of this. And there's some prompt questions in this framework. And then, as you can see in the middle, almost like a little sun, in the center is people and leadership. And they're ultimately everything comes back to the mindset, the behavior, the culture, the people within the organization, and their passion and drive behind this. And again, I'm sure you've both experienced this, where on paper the project looks absolutely amazing, it's going to be transformational for the organization. You're like, how is this not getting the traction it needs? And in many cases, it's things like trust. There's not trust within the organization. There's not things like clarity of, as I mentioned earlier on, roles and responsibilities, or clarity of what success looks like. There's leadership styles. Have we actually looked at what our leadership styles are going to need to be? Because often they need to change. And sometimes with leaders, we tend to kind of, we can sometimes go, yeah, we're doing all this, and we're not changing, we're just asking you to change. So it makes leaders accountable and managers accountable for owning it, because it has to come from the top down, and also demonstrating the behavior behind it. So these are just some prompt questions, but it's really important. And the other thing, of course, and you'll see in there, is the communications and change management. So again, with technology in particular, technology is the enabler. That's all it is, right? It can be amazing technology. It can be an eye-watering amount of money that you're spending on on the business case, right? But ultimately, it's the enabler. It's the people and the leadership, which is what's going to make the difference. So that's why I have that at the front and center. So communications, change management is fundamentally important. Um, what I would like to suggest, though, is at the right time. Okay, don't preempt, don't go premature, freaking people out about change that they're not ready for yet. It's how you bring your messages
Right.
into the organization. And again, we can, and I've been guilty of this in previous lives as well. We fire hose people because we're in the detail, we get it. It's like, or we go, oh, I've told these people 2 months ago what's happening. Why are they asking me questions now? Um,
Right.
and I know these things sound very simple, but actually, when you start to unpack it, you realize the impact that that has. And some simple changes will make a big difference. So that's kind of where I start. Then and guys, just flag me if I'm talking too long as well, because I'm conscious of the time. But we start to then look at the process. So it's process, plan, partnerships, and customer are kind of four very important pillars then, within that framework to be addressed. So of course process, and you guys will be all over this. It's really leaning into, right, let's not digitize dysfunction. Let's not create processes for the sake of process. How can we, create a whole new collaborative way of working for our people, for example, if that's where the focus is, and really understanding what's the impact there. So instead of diving into the detail too quickly, standing up in the balcony and going, right, what are the key processes, the high impact ones, high risk ones, and understanding, okay, right, well, how do we wrap our arms around this, to make sure it gets the resource and support it needs. So we really hone in on that. Also as well, and I'm sure Andy, you'll be smiling at this. This is where the opportunity to start extracting the manual elements, the Excel spreadsheets, the Excel, the copies of the Excel spreadsheets, the macro
Yeah, I was
slides,
going to
all
say
those things, right?
the copies.
So this is
The one that's 3 years. Oh yeah, I've got a copy from 3 years ago, and
yes,
we
yes,
we,
yes.
we worked for that one. Yeah, yeah,
Because people don't trust the data, right? This is where
yeah,
this comes
hundred
in a
percent.
lot. People are like, I don't trust, Power BI, or I don't trust whatever it is. No, 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 no. I've got my data. But of course, we all know what that means or what that results in. So the question here is, yes, the process, but the question here is, how can we also help our people to utilize and adopt what we're trying to do and trust in that? So how do we do that instead of just expecting them to just go, oh, I'll just drop all my Excel spreadsheets that I've loved for
Yeah,
the last 20 odd years of my life, right?
like a lot of the work that we do is around that get fit for digital.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
cleaning up or confirming the data, maybe their data is right and what's coming out of the snowflake or the central warehouse
yeah,
is not.
yeah.
But yeah, that's really important, and so many lean into, yeah, this is part of a successful lean program. What you're saying here, a lot of this. So
Mm.
the
Yeah.
plan, you said the next one was plan, right? Yeah,
Yeah, so the plan is, again, it's an ability or opportunity more so for leadership to stand back and go, okay, well, we've got our plan. It often lives at that exec or leadership level, and we haven't dropped the plan into the actual, what, connecting it into, okay, well, what does that mean within the world of the people who are, executing on this? So what we do is really tap into the plan. How clear is this? Do people truly understand what that is, what that means? Why are we doing it? And if not, what do we need to do about that? Also, what are the expectations? Like, again, we kind of tend to be a little bit lofty in our terminology. So what I focus on here often is, let's get a little bit more granular in what this is looking like, so people can really capture or connect with it. And also, one of the things I look at here as well, guys, which is I find so powerful, because often, people will go, yeah, we've got, these are the stats that we're aiming for in this plan. This is what we want. We don't want X amount of, 20% adoption or utilization, for example, and we want an uplift in revenue or whatever the scenario is. And I'm like, great, that's your statistic. What's your signal? What is your signal? And they're like, oh, what do you mean? And I'm like, okay, well, if you want an uplift in utilization, what's the signal that people are starting to adopt this way of working and adopt this process and adopt this
I see what you're saying.
technology,
Okay.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
How are you going to know when you walk into team, like we started this conversation with? How are you going to know? There's no number on a board that's telling us this is, crumbling, or this is going really well. But what are the signals that you as a leader need to be aware of? And it's amazing how people really lean into that. They're like, oh, hang on, okay, well, we're going to see some issues here, or we're going to see people pushing back on this, or we're going to see people are still hanging on to those Excel spreadsheets, or whatever the scenario is. But it helps the leaders become better leaders in this transformation, because they're now not just looking at the board numbers that are being presented back up in the board papers. They're looking at the people on the ground and how they can
yeah,
support them better as a result.
yeah. So for our Lean Six Sigma geeks out there, so the why measure, yeah, what is that? What is
Yeah,
that thing for this specific project or exercise or initiative? that's our canary in the coal mine, and we can quickly see if it's having a positive or a negative impact. And Billy Ray Taylor
Yeah,
says you can't manage a secret. All right, you can't manage a
yeah,
secret. So it's how do we
yeah,
get that?
yeah,
It's a great point for getting started.
yeah,
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 awesome.
yeah.
And what's next, Claire?
Next, partnerships. Partnerships are fascinating, particularly in the world of technology, because again, a lot of organizations have a dependency on partnerships. Partnerships are much more important. It's very rarely do I see organizations now go, full build internally. It's about creating partnerships. So, but in saying that, this is the reason that this is part of this framework is that we again need often, the partnerships, particularly in technology and where technologies come from that traditional role in organizations. Partnerships kind of just evolve over time and they just kind of grow, and there's no real management or, questioning around how will this partnership best serve my organization and what my project and what we're trying to do, rather than, oh, these are really good people and they seem to know the technology very well, so cool, we'll go with them. That's a really good metric for sure. But if we don't have partners that are aligned with what we're trying to achieve in a people and in an outcome perspective, as opposed to just delivering the technology, that can cause some headaches. And let me give you an example of that. So I was working with somebody not too long ago, and they had, they were working with a very, we'd all know the organization, the partner that they were looking at working with. But what was happening was their roadmap was being very heavily influenced by this partner, because this was the technology this partner knew. This is the
Oh, right.
technology that these
Yeah,
guys, basically the partner, of course, and rightly so, if you like, I can't argue with them. They're going, well, we're recommending this because it suits how we work, and
Hmm.
ultimately they want to keep the relationship with the customer, right? But I was asking the client, and I just sat down and I was like, okay, well, is this actually the best decision for you in terms of what you're trying to do, or are you being influenced perhaps a little bit too much by, the what the partner is putting forward in terms of the technology solution? So they went away and they looked, and ultimately they did go with that partner, but there was a change in the terms and how they would engage with that partner, and that partner was very much, it just shifted the power play a little bit, which was really good. They needed that because it's like, hang on, we've got to help get this outcome, not we've got to deliver great technology. It's a different conversation. So the way I work through this pillar, I guess, is how will the partners serve the transformation that's at play here, and what's their role in
Sure.
that, and what's our role, and how do we hold them accountable? Because often there's a lot of, and you still see situations where it's handshakes, believe it or
yep,
not, with some partners, and that's okay. Um, but is it okay for the transformation? Depend, like, if you're putting in a lot of money in a transformation, you
Right.
want a little bit more formality there,
yep,
and clarity, and more clarity than formality. It's just, this is what we need from you guys. Are you up for it? And that's, yeah. So it's really that way of thinking. So, and I guess then if I was to step into the customer is, of course, we absolutely, the customer is king, right? Or queen, depending where you're coming from. But again, what I see in the transformation readiness play is sometimes an assumption the customer's just going to love it. They're just going to love it. They're going to be, and you're going, okay, tell me more. But what we don't think about sometimes is you're asking the customer perhaps to change their way of buying from you or the way of working with you. You might be asking there's way more options in what the customer can now get from you, but does the customer feel a little bit overwhelmed? Have we actually communicated and effectively built in those feedback loops that are quick to, give us back that feedback? And what are we asking them? So it's interesting. We
Right.
get so caught up in the technology again, and this is why I built this way. We get so caught up in the technology, we forget about the hard work, which is, right, we need to mobilize our people and our around actually delivering value for the customer. Again, the technology is the enabler, but when you're dealing with complexity of transformation level, it's easy to kind of forget or get so caught up in one element you forget something else, or it just doesn't get the focus it needs. So that's why this pillar's in there, as well as, what are the potential impacts of this transformation from a customer perspective? Okay, well, how do we need to manage that? What are the feedback loops we need to put into play? Are we going to maybe do some pilots instead of, again, sometimes we get all excited and just go big bang. Let's just embed some pilots in play here and see what that play looks like. And then from that, maybe consider, are we prematurely investing in something that we've assumed the customer is going to love? Because we love it, and we think it's really valuable. Or in some cases, it's because simply we think, well, we know if we change this, ultimately it's going to create a better revenue stream, or a better ongoing revenue stream for us as well. And that's completely fine. That's part of business, right? But we need to consider that. How can we make this a very customer-centric transformation in a way that's still uplifting all the internal results as well. So that's why I guess, what I'm trying to say here, guys, sorry, I'm on my first coffee, but what I'm trying to say here is we need to have that balance of the internal and the external, but we have to hold both at the same time. So there's certain things you need to think about. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Solutions looking for a problem, and it sometimes doesn't work that well. It's where's the customer? And lean, absolutely, that's why we're there. Is spot on.
Yeah.
So those are 5. Now there's 2 more.
Two
right?
more
in your framework, right?
Yes, and these are more. This is ultimately, it's calling out the tech and data and the innovation. So when we look at the tech and data, this is from the perspective of, okay, well, what's our roadmap and how is it aligned to this? So when I talk about the roadmap, it's not just the particular tech that's part of this framework, but what else is in flight? So, technology teams typically, depending on the makeup of the organization, you're going to have the operational tech, or the fundamental, whatever you want to call it, and keeping the lights on, making sure, ERPs, etc., are all working as we need them to, of course. And then, of course, you got the product guys as well, right? Where I look here is, what's the roadmap what's the complete roadmap? What does that look like? What's in flight? Because often where I see tech and data struggle is they're at capacity, and sometimes they're over capacity in terms of what they've committed to. Because when you add all the dots, you're like, hang on, those dependencies are really important to this part. And nobody's kind of got up in the balcony and said, hang on, we need to maybe look at our capacity here. What do we need to drop for a while, or whatever the scenario is? Again, it's about awareness so that you can best prepare for the execution, so that you're avoiding that whole tension around resource allocation, people allocation. If people are feeling like they're just getting more crap added to their day-to-day job, you're going to get that pushback. You're going to get that lag. Right. There's going to be people powering ahead, and then there's going to be people who are really not at the party because they're drowning because they're at capacity. So this is around, what's our roadmap look like? Chunk that down, and how is it aligned? So alignment is the key one here.
So
is it aligned?
So let me talk to this real quick.
Yeah, sure.
So it sounds like each of these pillars or parts of it can actually influence the others, because maybe we looked at the process, we looked at the plan, we have the plan, but we went through some of this other stuff. We get to the tech and understand, like you mentioned, hey, let's go up and see, what do we have in flight already? What are we already working on for our tech team? Well, they're not going to be done for 6 months. So you're saying we're going to start this plan in 3 months. That just ain't going to work, because now we're just overwhelming the system, and we're going to get nothing done instead of, a slower rollout or whatnot. So each of these are like listening to the others and informing the others. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, absolutely. Everything has to inform everything else. Because and this is what so if you were to map this out and put it up on a big whiteboard in front of you in the office or in the virtual meeting or whatever, you're going, hang on, there's something in here. I promise you, there's going to be at least one thing that you're going, oh, hang on,
right?
We haven't seen this big roadblock. Now we had, and sometimes and I've experienced this firsthand where a client was bringing in consultants prematurely into it because the company wasn't ready yet. they needed to hold fire, and we changed that. But yeah, there was definitely a, you know, come to Jesus moment of, oh, all right, this is not going to work. This is not going to work. Okay, what do we need to change? And that's what this is about. It's like everything needs to be joined up. We need joined up thinking.
Okay.
So that's where technology and business aligns. Yeah.
Sure. Okay, so now talk to me about innovation, because in my mind, I like pair innovation with technology already, and you are like, hey, these are separate things, the technology and the innovation. Explain that just a little bit, and that will be the framework, right? Like that's the last pillar.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love it. You know, so many people, and I do this too. You know, we just love the tech and the innovation together. There is an
Right.
expectation sometimes. If I put in this technology, innovation is going to happen. You know, or if I put in this technology, we're going to, you know, accelerate this the innovation. And sometimes it actually can be, it can create more friction within the innovation teams. So I guess the key question here is the innovation influencing the technology that the organization needs, or is technology influencing the innovation, for example? So is technology enabling more innovation to happen? What are you trying to do in your innovation? So again, this is about informing. So it's like, okay, well, what technology have we in flight? What can we do what can we leverage from that to increase our Horizon 1, 2, and 3 roadmap outputs? Cool. Or hey, we want to do this for our customers. We've seen, you know, AI, for example, or AR experiences, etc. We want to create this technology team. How can we weave this into how we work in the organization? So yes, the what we need to look at here is how does one support the other? They're not naturally living together. There is
Sure.
sometimes, and when you think of the mindset of tech people, in particular those who live in the operational technology world, their job is to keep things safe. Their job is to keep things stable. Their job is to
Mm.
keep the lights on. Their job is to make sure, you know, that's a very different mindset to an innovator who's like, okay, what's next? What are we doing? So we're trying to marry two very different functions in ways. So we've got to be very aware of that. So the question here is, okay, well, is technology influencing the innovation or vice versa? And are we happy with that? Okay, when we bring it back into that plan and bring it back into the reason of the transformation and bring it back into where the organization is going, are we happy with that, or do we need to change something here? So that's really what I'm talking to there. And you know, I've heard comments before. It's like, well, you know, we've implemented oh, what was it? Yeah, it was a Microsoft product. I won't say which one, but you know, they've implemented a product. Where are my efficiencies? So they were looking at the continuous improvement element, and the leader was sitting there going, "Where's my efficiencies? I don't get it." But what they hadn't looked at was the innovation, the product itself was not actually aligned to the innovation work the organization was doing. They just made assumptions at the start, and
Hmm.
they hadn't put out very clear metrics around what they wanted the innovation team to do. So innovation was like, well, why are you asking us this question? It's got nothing
Right.
to do with us, essentially. Again, because they hadn't done the preparation work, which is what this framework's around.
So what? Even though you ended with innovation, that
Yes.
in my head that like takes me back to the very beginning when you talked about purpose, because
Yeah.
we're not innovating just for the sake of looking the latest shiny and bright thing, but innovation has to be informed by what is the purpose of everything we're doing. So I really
Yeah.
appreciate that. I'm going to put this back up on the screen one more time, because here's and sorry Andy that I'm bogarting the whole conversation here. Um, but what I
What
really
is
appreciate, especially hearing you describe this, Claire, is my mind wants to have, when you're talking about a framework readiness or readiness framework, I want to have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 steps. But the way you have this out, it's not in a linear way of looking at things. You have something at the top that's overarching. Okay, so that's the purpose. But then these other things, maybe we hit leadership and people first because that's the center. But the rest of it seems like, I mean, can you go from the purpose to the people leadership, maybe the plan, maybe the partnership, and vice versa? Or is there a particular way that you found that this needs to be followed?
No, like that's the power of this. This is about you literally sitting there and going, right, connect first and foremost with the purpose. And I love that you're asking this question. Thank you. Yes, and that's why I have no numbers.
Right, which drives me crazy. But
Okay, I can put numbers in, Shane. I can put numbers in if you want. But ultimately, you could, naturally, we just read left to right. Okay.
right,
So,
yeah,
people often start with the process, but some companies, because they're very customer centric and they pride themselves on being, customer first orientated, they'll start with the
right,
customer and they'll work backwards.
right,
And it's all led by, okay, well, every organization is unique, in terms of the leadership, in terms of your experiences and your perspective. So you'll hone
okay,
in on what you're most comfortable with or what you're excited about first and foremost, and then
yeah,
fan out from that. But as you pointed out, everything's listening to everything else, everything's informing everything else. None of these can really operate in isolation. And that's why I guess I've designed it in this way, is that it's about how can we hold all of these things at the same time, because that's the challenge and the magic, right? It's not linear. We can't go, right, we'll fix our process, then we'll go into the plan, then we'll go into, we can't do that. That's not a way. So, the first thing is to go, right, hang on, let's map this out. How ready are we? What's it going to take to actually do this? This framework helps you stand back and really figure that out. And understand the impact. If you decide, okay, well, we're not going to do this. Okay, well, what's the opportunity cost of that, for example? Yeah, so there's no linear approach. It's about you sitting as a leader, and I have a piece in there as well as to how to use it if you want to just do a session with your team and surface some questions. It is a pragmatic and strategic tool at the right time. That's the thought process behind it. Let's
Yeah.
do it at an important juncture point where we're about to kick off. If we realize we're running a marathon and we've only done a couple of 10Ks in the last month, we know we need to hold fire, get a little bit fitter, and then lean into this more. And it's not that you're stopping, it's just that you're preparing better, so when you hit the ground running, you've got focus and you've got speed, rather than tripping yourself up because you haven't asked those questions at the start.
Yeah,
right,
and the importance in that title of it's a readiness framework, right? It's
Yes.
and then we get into execution, and that's really
Yep.
for me. I think of some of the analogies was like sharpening the saw. So
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's an analogy that gets used. If I had 5 hours to cut a tree down and my life depended on it, I'd spend the first 4 hours sharpening the saw. And it's like, yeah, because when you execute, you have to deliver, and the leaders or whoever's there is expecting that to happen instead of just hacking away. And it's been a fascinating chat. So Shane, have you got any final questions or comments for Claire?
I mean, when you, as our listening audience was like hearing this and trying to absorb all of this, and I don't know if they were able to, because this is intense. This is like in depth. I love what I'm seeing here, even though it's not numbered, but that's okay. I have my flaws. I have my
Let's create a
flaws.
number version for you.
What do you find leaders have the hardest time seeing the gap in? Where do the wheels fall off in this conversation? As they're
So,
trying to, I'm just thinking about our listening audience, or viewing audience, and them thinking about, well, if I did something like this, something akin to this, where there's using some kind of a readiness framework, if I want to make sure I'm ready, what can I be aware of where we might step right in it, or walk right past whatever we really need, that's super important to this.
I would suggest, so I think I talked about a little bit at the start, where like we get very excited about the technology and the possibilities.
Sure.
We've got these beautiful PowerPoint presentations that are showing us what we're doing in the next 3 to 5 years, and where things can potentially fall over before they start is back with your people and leadership. No one's surprised, but everyone's surprised, right? It's like, oh,
Right.
really? But a statement I hear a bit is, people, and we've all heard it. People just need to get on the bus. This is where we're going. Da, 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 da. I'm like, okay. Have you given them a ticket to get on the bus? Have you told them what bus stop they're getting on? Because we don't want
Come on
everyone on
now.
at the start. And they're like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, think about what you're asking here. So it could be, I'm asking you to work in an entirely different way with a new system and etc. And you're just asking people, you're telling people to get on the bus. It's like, well, we need to chunk that down and help people to do that, because otherwise you're stepping in on the minefield of employee turnover, because people will just start to go, yeah, this I can't, I don't want to be here. I'm gonna go
or
somewhere else.
sabotage, right?
And
Yeah.
and research is showing us, and there's actually been some really interesting research, Shane, around, I think it was, I can find it and send it through, but it's something like 39% of projects, AI projects, have demonstrated internal sabotage. So people have admitted to actively sabotaging AI projects internally.
Wow.
And what's really interesting is a lot of the younger generation, not the olders. It's not the people who you would have assumed. Older people are like, oh, it's going to take my job. No, it's actually younger people. It's really interesting because they're feeling overwhelmed and they haven't been given the bus ticket ultimately to jump on the bus of the transformation and what that's looking like for their org. So that's where it often falls over. The other thing is the customer. The feedback loops are not tight enough, and they're not the aligned, the meaningful metrics. So, when I talked about the signals versus stats, or not versus, sorry, it's and. We need to be very, very mindful of what are our signals that this is working as leaders, that we will know when we walk into any environment in our organization. We'll know.
Right.
Japanese leaders are very good at this. Japanese leaders, as of course you would know in the lean world, they're very, very good at sensing the energy, sensing what's happening, looking beyond just the stats on the board. And yeah, I've obviously I haven't worked at Canada, Australia. I experienced that firsthand as well.
Yeah, I love data, but I prefer the facts. And getting out there and going into the customers world. This is, as I said, this has been a great conversation. Claire, thank you so much for coming along. Well, this is what it's all about, right? We come here to listen, to learn. People can pause this and come back if that's how they're feeling, but I doubt that. But anyway. They probably pause me. Who knows? But we'll.
You just gave them a master class in one of your bread and butter things you do, so it was fantastic.
Yeah. And sharing that with us, we really appreciate it. So there's obviously lots more to learn. How can people get in touch with you, Claire?
Oh, so good old LinkedIn, I guess, is probably a starting point if they want to connect with me on that. So, and I think the link is going to go in to this as well. But LinkedIn, maybe have a look at my website. You can get a flavor for what I do and how I do it there as well. techteamwhisperer.com. And yes, that's probably the first starting point. Just reach out, and I'm a person, I love talking to people, helping them kind of figure out what they want to do. So there's opportunities there, I think, on my website to book in a phone call with me if people are interested to learn more, maybe talk through a specific project they're about to start or they're in, and realizing they need to, maybe they're on that marathon path and realize they might need to, get a little bit fitter. I'd love to have a conversation and see if I can help them shed any light on some things as well. So yes, excellent. That's probably the two best things. LinkedIn, website would be the best starting points.
Awesome.
And I'm happy to talk to people in the US, no problem.
Yeah. Me too. And I am now. Yeah. We are now. So.
Yeah, I'm right here. Hello.
I know. That's what I'm saying. And they even wear bluey shirts. It's great.
I know. It's just gonna. Shayne gets the 3 points today for best shirt. Sorry, Claire.
Bluey and bingo.
Hey guys, thanks very much for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time with another fantastic guest. But thanks again, Claire, and we'll see you all next time.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody.